Hello everyone, it's Faye, and I am back, and I am so sorry that it has taken me so long. I had 2 crazy months between LARP and life, so I did not get a chance to finish filming the creation of the pieces that I was making for my costuming. Because I had to get them done in a very quick period of time, I didn't have time to, do the camera setup, make sure I was getting all the shots, pausing and stopping and starting again. So I had to really quickly burn through the rest of my projects. So this video is obviously going to be a combination of the original sets of filming, where I was filming bit by bit, and what is the finished product. So I have some film of the steps and some film of just the finished product, and I'm so sorry that I didn't get a chance to do proper step-by-step videos for you. But next video I'm actually going to do my weapon, and so what I'm hoping to do is order the actual weapon that she's going to be using in game, and then show you a breakdown. I'm actually going to dissect the one I built and show you what's wrong with it, so that you know what not to do. So this is the next video in our character creation series. I am so sorry it took so long. Thank you for sticking with me and not giving up on me, and let's get started. Everybody, and welcome back. We are finally going to be working on our Building a LARP Character from the Ground Up series today. Today I am talking to you about textiles, so costuming, where to get your costuming, how to make costuming that you don't already have, what kind of materials to look for, that sort of thing. So without further ado, because it's been forever, let's get started. As some of you may recall, and if you need a recap, we are creating a felinae based on an Egyptian Mao for my LARP at Legacies. Or LARP called Legacies. I showed you guys a sketch when we were going over makeup and kind of character creation and where to get inspiration and all that sort of stuff, but I'm just going to recap this sketch because I'm going to go over what we're going to be doing for each costuming piece. Because this is the textiles, we're not going to be focusing on her weapon today. I'll probably do that next week, but I wanted to talk about her costume, or both of her costumes technically, because this is going to be worn under this, and also about her ears and tail, which I was going to do as part of the makeup section, but decided to include in the textile section, partially because I couldn't find any fur at the time, and partially because it is technically more of a textile sewing project. So, this is our sketch. This is our character, and I'm going to go over which parts we're going to be making today and which parts I'm going to be purchasing or thrifting. First of all, I'm going to be making this dress sort of thing today. I will also be making these sleeves and probably the head wrap. The things I'm going to be thrifting are things I'm going to be thrifting are these shirts, probably a belt, and some pouches if I can find them, and if not, we'll have to reuse some from another character. The things I'm purchasing, outright purchasing, are these pants. I actually found an almost identical pair in the perfect color on a site called harempants.com. They are made in Thailand, and they ship free internationally if you spend more than $60. So I actually went in. Their pants are super cheap. They're like $25-ish to $30 American, which for a good harem pant is not too bad. And if you go in with a friend, you can get up to that $60 minimum. We actually went in with her friend Skywind, and or the guy who plays her friend Skywind, and his dad, who also plays in our LARP. Both bought a few pairs of pants. So that's covered. Her pants are covered. These I'm going to be this shirt I'm going to be thrifting. I don't have the material to make it. But yeah, we're going to go over the textiles that we've got today to make this, and I'm still figuring out the top piece, so we'll maybe trial and error that today. And I'll also go over the fur that I got for her ears and tail. So for the dress, I'm going to be using this kind of pale blue linen I don't know if it's like a legit linen or just a linen type material. I got it in the clearance section at Fabricland, and I actually got it to make a completely different dress, which I made and just wasn't in love with, so that kind of sucks. But I'll be making this dress out of the same kind of pale blue linen. I do love the color on myself, I just wasn't in love with the style of the dress I made with the other part of it, but I bought a ton of it because it was on sale. So that's what we're going to be making her dress out of today. I've got some headbands, just these plain black metal headbands tend to blend best with hair, and I bought a bunch of them because I'll be making ears for Sky, and probably another set of ears for a different character later on. And then I found okay, actually I'll show you this last. So I'm going to be doing the inside of her ears with this white trim. I didn't need a whole meter when all I was doing was the inside of her ears. So I'm hoping, I picked out the widest piece I could find. I'm hoping this piece of trim will be wide enough to fit the entire ear pattern on, and then it'll make up the inside of her ears, and then I'll be able to trim it down as needed. And then I actually found like the most perfect fur because it's already kind of Mao spotted. So I'm super happy with this. I'm going to be making her tail and the outside of her ears out of this. I bought a meter, which is probably way more than I needed, but I think I'm probably going to, in the winter time, I'm also going to make her like leg ruffs and a neck ruff to represent her getting a bit of a winter coat. So those are the materials we're going to be working with today, and I will kind of update you throughout the day on what we're doing with them. Thanks, guys. The first thing you want to do when you're making animal ears is to sketch out a shape that you like. And now I have I've done a few sets of ears, so I have a fairly good idea of kind of what shape and size I like for my ears to be, and the angles that I need for the curve. But this is a lot of trial and error. So you're going to make kind of the ear shape that matches the animal you're trying to represent. But you're also going to try and, you've also got to remember you've got the curve of your headband, and you want the outside portion. I do try to leave a little bit of that kind of outside flap shape in cat ears, because they do have that kind of outside flap, and I am going for a more, in this case, a more realistic ear. So once you're happy with how your pattern looks, you can then cut it out, and then start patterning it from, and remember, whatever you do, you want to flip this so that you have both sides. So I'll show you. And this is going to work with clothes too if you're making clothing. But now you have your pattern piece, and this is kind of to the size I want the ear when it's finished. What most people do is they add the edges, but I do that normally when I'm actually cutting the fabric, which is the wrong way to do it. So do it like about a ½ inch larger all the way around than you actually want the finished product to be. But there's your pattern piece, and it's curved, and you just put it up against your head, and you can adjust that curve as needed up against your own head. And then you've got your pattern. This isn't a required step, but if you want your ears to have kind of a bend to them so that you can shape them a little more naturally, pick up some wire mesh and line the inside of the ears with them. So you're going to cut one of these a little bit smaller than the piece you're going to cut out of your fabric. So you're going to trace your ear on it and cut it out kind of roughly to the shape, so that you have that like natural forming shape for the inside of the ear. Your wire pieces, you're going to want to start working on your fabric. You're going to place your fabric with the fur pointing away from you, so like the pile going up like that. And you're going to place your pattern piece, and this one's going to require a bit of wiggling. We're going to do some figuring to get it to sit nice, but essentially you want two pattern pieces, and you want to make sure that you flip your pattern so that they're opposite of each other. And then you're just going to mark this out in chalk or something that's not going to permeate, especially white fur. You have to be really careful not to use stuff that's going to permeate the material and wreck it. But essentially you want your ear pointing up towards the top of your fur, and you're good. Cutting fur, if you're not using an X-Acto knife, it's very important to be extremely careful about where you're cutting, because you will cut the fur if you're not careful. So one of the things that I try to do is make sure that I'm almost like parting the fur, and you really only want to be cutting this gauze layer that the fur is attached to. So you want to bring your scissors up as snug to that layer as you can, and just be very careful. Otherwise you will cut the fur and you're going to start losing chunks. So, and then you just have like these weird patchy ears. So you can see the fur isn't getting cut this way. You just want to be very, very careful with scissors. I do it a tiny, tiny bit at a time. If you have like an X-Acto knife or something where you can control the pressure, that's even better, because you're not going to cut into this fur. You can control just cutting this portion. But if you're using scissors, just be really cautious and pull it right up against the gauze, and don't cut the fur. So you can see again, we're keeping that fur nice and long and in one piece. When you're done, you're going to have a couple pieces of, well, 4 pieces of fur and 2 pieces of this wire mesh, and now we just need to assemble it. So, as you just saw, I had some step-by-step of the process behind my ears. We were playing, as I said, a feline character, so I have, well, essentially what happened was I sandwiched with hot glue those metal pieces between the 2 bits of fur, the white and the patterned, and I just glued them together. I rolled the edges of the fur to create a crisper edge, and just added a bit of hot glue there, and then I just took some felt to attach them to a headband and pierced them with these awesome, these were actually a thrifting find. I decided that this character was going to wear all gold because she is from a kind of Egyptian type country. Damascus has a very Egyptian feel to it. So I got her these really cool kind of hand wrought brass looking or gold looking earrings, and I just actually pierced her ears. So that was how I finished the ears, and then for the tail I cut out just essentially a rectangle, and I measured it about 8 inches across, and then I stitched it together with a curve at the bottom. You still cut a rectangle, but then you curve the end as you're sewing it together. I turned it right side out, stuffed it, obviously. You can see it's like quite plush. And then just sewed the top to an elastic band. This is like a super, super easy way to build a tail for a LARP character. So as long as you don't need to have like different colors or textures of fur, this worked out really well for her because she's got that kind of Egyptian Mao look. I actually bought this fur as is and did not have to paint it, which was really fortunate. So that was how I completed her ears and tail, and that is, I guess, the final parts for her skin. Oh wait, no it's not. So another project I did for her skin was I created these really quick, shitty, beep language, really terrible sleeves. And I'm going to make a better set of these, but the original set is just essentially a pair of tights or pantyhose. And this works really good for any character where you're going to have a different skin tone. Find a pair of pantyhose or tights in that color. You cut a hole for your head, and this one is actually frayed really badly. I have learned since that sealing the opening with nail polish before you cut the hole is a really good way of keeping it from opening up quite this wide. I'm going to have to rebuild these because of this. And then I didn't make fingers on this one. I'm going to make a set with fingers for future, but then I just took Indian ink and stained or painted the spots on for her markings, and then on the other side I gave her, because she's a elemental magic user, I gave her kind of a lightning pattern because she's lightning touched, so I gave her kind of a lightning pattern up her fur. So yeah, so that was how I completed her I guess her skin, or the things that are a part of her versus clothing. So next I had to work on her costuming, and her costuming ended up being a mix of purchased and made items. So I'm going to start with the kind of more of the purchase stuff. So again, I did a lot of I did all thrifting for her. I didn't pay full price for anything except for her pants, because I was having a hard time finding what I wanted in pants. So I thrifted this really cool, it's like a hinged bracelet, and she wore that on one arm, and then these bangles on the other, and they're, again, all that gold kind of old gold color. And then I also thrifted this necklace. Now this necklace, as you may recall, is very similar to the drawing I did of her, and I will try and link a picture of that here. So it was actually really cool that I found this, because it's so similar to my original concept for the character. And I had originally tried to make like a torque style necklace, and it just wasn't working out. So I found this, I was super stoked. And then for her kind of dress thing, what I ended up doing, it's not exactly like the drawing, but it's got the feel, which was really important. So what I ended up doing was I cut 2 rectangles of fabric, essentially. And this one is really not cool. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I cut 2. What I did was technically I cut 1 rectangle, and then I cut it in half when I realized the back wasn't doing what I wanted to. So I cut 2 rectangles of fabric, and then one corner of each piece I attached to this, and then stitched a little bit down the middle to connect them. So it was still like a closed piece in the front, but it's got this kind of nice drapiness to it. And then in the back, I took it in to a point where I felt that it was comfortable, and just sewed it just a straight line across the seam. And obviously I hemmed all the way around the rectangles before I did this. You'll see there is like quite a bit of fray happening, but it is not actually tearing the seam, because what I did before I did anything else was I took and did a zigzag stitch. This is a great trick if you don't have a serger, is to put a zigzag stitch around all of the fabric you're going, like at the hem of all the fabric you're going to be using, anywhere where it's going to be open essentially, and then doing your seam behind the zigzag stitch. The zigzag stitch will catch any fraying and keep it, it essentially works like serging. So this has got quite a bit of fray, but it's not passing that zigzag point, and I will trim it off eventually. This was a rush project. So this ended up being a really beautiful piece. It kind of actually trailed in the ground a little bit, which meant that it got really dirty at game, but I thought it turned out really beautifully, and I was really happy with the final look of the character. She did have that very kind of prestigious, kind of priestessy teacher sort of look to her, so that worked out really well. And then I created a veil for her, because she is maintaining her purity until she finishes her training as a priestess. So I just essentially made a giant square of fabric, and I, again, just did that zigzag stitch all along the edges, wherever there was not the finished edge from the fabric store. And I actually didn't do anything else with this. I just zigzag the edges because I wanted it to be kind of rough around the edges. So that is what she wears, and so what I did was I draped that over her head, and then I just bobby pinned it in the middle to her headband to make sure that it stayed in place when I was running around, because it was behind her ears, which meant that it didn't stay properly otherwise. So that was that. And those were both just fabrics that I had left over, and when I decided that that was going to be my color concept, I pulled those out and used them. The shirt that she wore under that kind of drapey, tunicky dress thing was a tank top that I got from the thrift store. And actually, originally, the tank top buttoned up this is inside out, I think. Yeah, it is. Okay, so originally it was kind of like a tunicky tank top, in that it had like this kind of open... Sorry, let me turn it right side out. So it had this very long open side, which I really liked. I thought that would lay nicely, and it was a long tank top. And originally it actually buttoned up the front. So what I did was I took the buttons off, and I opened it up just a little bit more and tied a ribbon at the top. And then I redid the sleeves in kind of like a braided motif, and I wore it backwards. I did actually also open up the armpits a little bit more, just because the sleeve, once I took the sleeve and braided it, it was a little bit tight. So it ended up being this very pretty, kind of drapey thing with this really interesting open back design. And again, that was just a tank top. I think I paid like $3 for it at the thrift store. And then the most expensive part, the only part that I really paid much money for, was her pants. And these I got from a website called hairandpants.com. I will link them down below. I love this website. They make the best pants. They also have like some really good pockets on them. So for like carrying extra spell pouches and stuff, it worked out really well. So yeah, so they're just these like nice plain blue, again very similar to what I had intended, and then they've got this kind of nice seam detail here, and they were super comfy, super easy to run around in. What I would end up doing is either taking off the tunic or the like long dress tunic-y thing, or I would tuck it up into the belt when she was running around fighting. So that was how I finished her costuming pieces. I will hopefully be ordering the upgraded version of her weapon this week, and hopefully by next week I will be able to do you another video on weapon builds, and I will show you how I built her original weapon and things I would have done differently, and then we will go over how the new weapon is going to be built. So, see you guys later. Hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry it took so long. I'm out.